We all know how the Republicans like to deflect and blame everything on the Democrats, but that's just what they love to do because they really have no policy to offer. But the Republicans are blaming Democrats for the high rise in crime, but data shows that the higher murder rates are coming from the red states. And yes, crime is up, but 8 out of the 10 states with the highest murder rates voted for Trump in 2020. Now, Republicans have repeatedly blamed Democratic policies in the big cities for a rise in murder rates during the pandemic, when in fact, the Republican states are reporting much higher homicide rates, and some of the highest murder rates are in cities that were led by Republican mayors, according to a data that was compiled by the centrist think tank Third Way. Now, Republicans from former squatter Donald Trump to congressional lawmakers to the faux talk and heads have repeatedly pointed to the Democrats' supposed soft on crime approach, the bail reform laws, and the defund the police rhetoric from the Democratic activists for fueling a surge in violent crime when it's the other way around. But the third way report shows that the murder rates are far higher in the Trump voting red states, and some of the highest murder rates are in cities that are led by Republicans. Now, Republicans seem to do a much better job of talking instead of stopping the crime. Jim Kessler, who's one of the report's authors, told Axios. Now, the murder rates were an average of 40% higher in 2020 in the 25 states that Trump carried in the last election, compared to states that were carried by Biden. The far higher and far higher than in the deep blue states like New York and California, where Republicans have assailed Democratic criminal justice reforms. And instead, the highest murder rates were found in states like Mississippi, Kentucky, Alabama, South Carolina, and Arkansas, which all of those states were dominated by Republicans and were easily won by Trump in 2020. Now, in all, 8 of those 10 states with the highest per capita murder rates in the country had voted for Trump in 2020. Now, none of those eight states have ever been carried by a Democrat since 1996. Mississippi had far the highest murder rate at 20.5 murders per 100,000 residents, followed by Louisiana at 15.79. Alabama and Missouri all had murder rates higher than 14 per 1,000, compared to a national average of 6.5. The only states that voted for Biden to appear in the top 10 are Georgia, a longtime Republican stronghold that went blue by a tiny margin in 2020, and then New Mexico. The large blue states that have attracted criticism from the Republicans had murder rates significantly below the national average. New York's murder rate was at 4.11 murders per 1,000 residents, and California was 5.59 per 1,000, according to the study. Now, Mississippi's murder rate was 400 times higher than New York's and 250 times higher than California's. The Republicans and the media have also focused on Democratic-led cities in the coastal states. The many Republican-led cities have posted much higher murder rates. Despite intensive media coverage of increasing crime in the House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's San Francisco district, the murder rate in that city was only half that of the House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy's district in Bakersfield, California, which is a city it's a Southern California city with a Republican mayor that overwhelmingly voted Trump. Jacksonville, Florida, another Republican-led city, had 120 more murders than San Francisco did back in 2020, with only a slightly larger population, but received only a tiny fraction of the national news coverage. Jacksonville, Florida, um, had a murder rate of 19.78 per 100,000 residents. Other Republican-led cities like Tulsa had also a 19.64, Fresno, California with 14.09, Bakersfield 11.91, Oklahoma City 11.16, and Lexington, Kentucky 10.61. They've had a much higher murder rate than the two biggest cities in the nation. New York with a 5.94, and Los Angeles, California with a 6.74. Some Democratic-led cities, including Chicago, had a 28.49, and Houston with 17.32. And they have certainly seen alarming increases in crime, but the faux coverage and Republican rhetoric has focused vastly more on those examples than on comparable cities with Republican mayors. and there has been undeniably an increase in homicides during the pandemic. The United States has saw a 30% increase in homicide since 2020. The third way data shows that murder rates have climbed slightly faster in red states than the blue. Murder rates rose by an average of 32.2% in states that voted for Trump in 2020 compared to 30.8% in states that had backed Biden. 3 of the 5 states that saw the highest increases voted for Trump. Wyoming with 91.7%, South Dakota with 69%, and Nebraska with 59%, which are all rural states with no large cities, but they do not fit into the Republican narrative. Among states that voted for Biden, Wisconsin saw the highest increase at 63.2%, while Minnesota saw murders rise up to 58.1%. Only one of the 10 states with the highest increases was among the top 20 states in population density, and that was Delaware, with a population of less than 1 million. California's murder rate increased by 31%, about the national average, while New York had a higher than average increase of 45.8%. A 2021 analysis had previously found that the murder rate increase in the Republican-led cities was virtually identical to that in Democratic-led cities, despite Republican claims, and no city in the nation has defunded the police, and hardly any have cut what they call police budgets. And this is more than a matter of Republican talking points from faux commentary. Now, the mainstream media news outlets like CNN and the New York Times have similarly pumped out countless headlines warning of rising murder rates in big cities. The current narrative around crime and murder is convenient and wrong, the third way report concluded. The data clearly paints a different story. Now, the increase in murders is not a Democratic city's problem, but a national problem overall. The murder rates are actually higher in the Republican Trump voting states that haven't even flirted with ideas like defund the police, the think tank said. A more accurate conclusion from the data is that Republicans do a far better job blaming others for higher murder rates and actually reducing the murder rates in their towns. So if you like the video, you can give the video a like and subscribe to my channel, RBW King. You could also hit the notification bell so that you'll be notified when a new video comes out. And if you want to support my work even further, you could donate to my Patreon link, which is on the About section of YouTube, to help further support the channel, and it could go a long way. So, yeah.